Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for FourCast is provided by Cachefly at CACHEFLY.com.
This episode of FourCast is brought to you by Netflix. Watch thousands of TV episodes and movies streamed to your PC, Mac, or TV instantly. Plus, get DVDs by mail in about a business day. For your free 30-day trial, go to netflix.com/twit.
What sort of future do you think we're heading for? How will we live as we slip into the 21st century?
Welcome to FourCast, episode 75. I'm Tom Merritt.
And I'm Scott Johnson. Holy cow, Tom. 75 episodes. What the what?
We're getting close to 100.
Yeah.
Then we have to start doing past cast.
Should we do something special for 100? I mean, this is probably not the place to plan that, but it feels like we should. I don't know what that should be.
I predict we will. Joining us today, though, to get us through our 75th episode. You got to take it one step at a time before we get to 100. Aaron Newcomb, producer and host of The Source Show, and also co-host of Floss Weekly right here on the Twit Network. Also a employee of Oracle.
That's right.
Were you a Sun employee that came to Oracle?
I was.
Okay.
I was a Sun employee and now a Oracle employee. So, yes, I stayed through the transition. But, no, I'm glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
It's nice to be able to have enough chairs for both of us.
I know.
I've often kicked you out of a chair coming in to fill in for Leo on security now.
Yeah, when Leo was on vacation, Tom was filling in obviously a lot, and I would be doing Floss Weekly, and then he would come in and be, get out, we gotta start the next show.
You're like, you don't have to do that. You don't have to start on time. What's your problem, man?
Yeah, right. This is the cottage, isn't it?
Also joining us, Mary Varn, New York-based animator, digital effects artist, and cartoonist, creator of NPC, a comic strip about life as a geeky gamer girl. Welcome, Mary.
Hi, thank you. It's great to be here.
I know you and Scott talked earlier today on his show, The Morning Stream. Are you sick of him yet?
No, this is the first time I got to talk to Scott, and I'm a huge fan, so it was great. And it's just a freak coincidence that I ended up on the show tonight, so I'm super psyched.
So it's weird. It's weird timing. I feel like we need to take advantage of this somehow. I don't know what that means or what this all means, but it's very interesting that we happened to talk to you this morning, and bam, here you are again.
Well, I just promoted The Morning Stream. Did you talk about her being on FourCast this morning on your show?
No, because we didn't know about it yet. all we knew is that she is an awesome cartoonist, one of the nicest people in web cartooning today, and that she has a better diet than I do. And that's all. That's about as far as we took it.
Well, then I strike it from the record. I'm not going to mention your show again. No, I'm just kidding. Great to have both of you with us today. I really appreciate you taking the time to join us. And we've got a prediction from a listener to kick us off. Ken wrote in and said, hey, Scott and Tom. Regarding copyright, after listening to the last podcast and also hearing Nilay Patel's thoughts on a previous Tech News Today, I think copyright law will eventually turn into right to access. Imagine an internet profile that tracks all the things you have legally bought and paid for. If you were to watch a YouTube video featuring a Disney clip that you didn't have legal access to, you would get a message informing you so with a link to where you can purchase this right. Of course, this poses other problems, but everyone will worry about those later. I don't think this will happen because I don't think we'll allow it to happen, but I think it could easily happen if we let it.
Mm-hmm.
So you see this as a terrible, terrible thing. Well, maybe you're not saying it's a terrible, terrible thing, but I see it as kind of a bad thing because I don't like the idea that, okay, the idea that every mainstream movie, let's say my ability to watch Avatar, would be tagged as something I either have the right to see or I don't. I get that, and I see how that could make sense. But I don't want to be, what will happen in that scenario is everything will get nickel and dime. So every little YouTube clip, I want to see a dog riding a skateboard, it's going to have to check to see if I have ownership to do that. And if I don't, I can't see it. And then I got to go pay to do that. And then things get crazy and everybody will charge for some of the stuff that is open and free and that challenges our, you know, our ability to make content online. And I think that's bad. None of that's good.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I've often thought this, you know, right now, without going off on a terrible tangent, I mean, the media industry really has a stranglehold on everybody because they say, well, you bought a piece of media, be it a CD or something, and that doesn't give you the right to do whatever you want with the music. I get that. It just gives you the right to listen to music. But then if I lose the CD, I've got to go buy another one so that I can get the music back. I should be able to go download that free of charge because as you said in your license, I have the right to listen to that music by purchasing that CD. So
right. If I'm not going to own the thing, I should own the license.
Right.
And you're saying I don't own either.
Right. Exactly.
So that scenario works for things like cloud music, cloud-based music and stuff. And we, Apple's rumored to be talking about this at the conference coming up, and we may hear it from Amazon and Google and others are planning things like this. I think when you take special cases like this, totally works. I'm all for it. I love the idea of my music being in the cloud and being able to get a hold of an album, whether I have it with me or not, or whether I've lost it or not. That stuff seems pretty cool. I just feel like it's that slippery slope thing where they start going, every single thing, that image on this website, you haven't paid the 10 cents we need from you to view it. So go to this other place and pay that, and then just microtransact me to death before I can view the internet as a whole. That concerns me just a little bit.
Yeah. This kind of gets into my medium-term prediction, so I don't want to. I don't want to talk about this too much, but
no spoilers.
Well, Mary, you make a comic, and much like I do, and you want people to look at it every day. How do you feel about a possible future where people would have to have the right to see it, and by right that would mean they have to sort of own the rights to see it? How does that sit with you?
Yeah, I don't like that. I mean, they already have the right to see it because I give them the right. I publish it online for free, so they can see it that way. But I think that, I think if that happened, I would be afraid to go on the internet and look at videos and comics because I would be worried that I would get a bill or, one of these.
It'd be like Clippy. We noticed you're looking at this. A bill has been charged to your credit card.
Yeah, and then I think that would hurt my comic because I think other people would be afraid to look at things. So I think it would hurt any kind of independent media like that.
Somebody in the chat room was just saying that why should anything be free? Why do things have to be free? And I think that is the problem, is that we're approaching this whole issue with that question, which is why we get people trying all kinds of digital locks, and that's why I don't think what Ken's saying will happen, is because digital locks are broken to begin with. In an infinitely copyable medium, it's impossible to lock this stuff down. And I don't think it's a question of why should things be free. I think you have to come to it with a realization that this is an ecosystem or a system that has things that are available for free. It's like saying, well, why should driving on the road be free? Let's make all roads toll. Well, you can. It's in fact easier to make all roads toll roads than it would be to make the internet locked up digitally so that you had to pay for everything you looked at. But it goes against the way the system is meant to work, and I think we're more creative than that. I think that's a very simple-minded way of looking at it, saying let's replicate the problems of the past, and I think also Mary is probably emblematic of this in her response. When you said I want my comic to be free because I want people to look at it, and I think more people are going to grow up with that attitude, and that combined with the psychology of the matter that says if I'm not depriving someone of something, I find it a lot harder to be against it. When people are like, it's just like stealing. You wouldn't take someone's car, would you? Don't download illegal files. I'm not saying that you should download illegal files, but it isn't the same psychologically, and trying to approach it and force people to think of it the same way isn't going to work. Right.
Yep. Right. I always think about it too, like in terms of a live event. I think people have this so wrong. I was just at a live event the other night, and they're like, the public announcer comes on. He's like, well, please turn off all of your cameras and everything because we don't want you to be taking, personal video of this because it's blah, blah, blah. And it's like, you know what? If I was running a live event, I would be, please get out your cameras right now. Turn off the flash, of course. We don't want any accidents. But take as much video as you can, and please, when you get home, put it on YouTube. Share it on Twitter, share it on Facebook. Think about how many. I mean, you would sell out so much more as a live performance if you had that type of. It's like your own advertising agency sitting in the audience, and people aren't taking advantage of it. It's kind of crazy.
All right, let's move on to our short-term predictions. These are things we think will happen sooner rather than later, maybe even in the next few years. And Mary, we'll start with you. When you look into your short-term crystal ball, what do you see?
Well, so I'm an animator, and I work on TV shows now and then. I think in 5 years, I think that the idea of blocking shows into 30-minute and 1-hour segments will be dead. I think that shows like, I don't know about existing shows, but new shows like sitcoms, like whatever the new 30 Rock is, sometimes it'll be 20 minutes, sometimes it'll be 40 minutes, kind of like podcasts like this, because I think everything will be on demand. So so they won't need to structure things that way. And then you have the different advertising models of, you know, you don't have to block out the 3-minute segments. And I think it'll confuse people in the entertainment industry. And people will just adapt and figure it out.
I think that's interesting because, like, what you're describing is essentially what movies have decided to stick with, which is generally there's a 2-hour film, but a lot of times it's an hour and 37 minutes. A lot of times it's an hour and 12 minutes. Sometimes it's 4.5 hours, depending on the scope of the film.
Depending on if James Cameron is involved.
Right, exactly. If he's involved, plan on a little more time. Same with Peter Jackson. And if you were to place those same kind of restrictions on them, and again, they're not, like you say, they're not dealing with the restrictions of network TV where it's based on an advertising model where ads run at a certain interval and they have to be so long, and really your show is only 40 minutes and the rest is made up in ads and 15 minutes of ads or so. As that changes or goes away, I agree that we'll see that go away. But I think what will happen probably is people are still pretty comfortable with about an hour for, say, a drama.
Yeah.
I think that feels right. But I think what we'll end up getting is an actual hour of the drama. And the advertising will either come in a different way or there'll be another model that'll come in. I do like, and you mentioned this about podcasting, I do like in podcasting that if I need to go over, I can. I don't have to, answer to the man about how tightly scheduled my show is. I can be a little
Hurry it up, Scott. We're running a little long.
I knew you were going to do that. I felt it coming. That was weird. But yeah, I'm all for this idea that we get away from those, because they can be restrictions sometimes. And sometimes when they break those rules, it's just this big stupid media event like, oh, The Office is going to go extra 6 minutes tonight. And that's no big deal. What I want to see is them break those bonds a little bit and do what the creative mind tells them to do and forget about convention.
Yeah,
I mean, TV is the only thing that's like this, because novels like the Harry Potter novels, they're not always a certain number of pages. Web shows like The Guild or something, it's always different. Movies are always slightly different. Podcasts, all these things, but it's only TV because we have this system of, starts at 8. People are watching when they eat dinner and everything, and there's the commercials and everything. So that's the only system I can think of for entertainment where everything has to be, either fit in this 30-minute chunk with a certain amount of ads or an hour with a certain amount of ads.
Yeah.
Well, it's appointment viewing, right? You want to be able to tell people your show is on Thursdays at 8 o'clock, so everything has to fit into that template. Mm-hmm. When you bust out of that and say you can watch the show whenever you damn well want, then you're freed from that restriction.
Right, and I think things like Boxy and other systems are starting to get us away from that. Boxy has their concept of their apps, but really they're channels. And so, you go on there, you subscribe to a podcast or whatever, and when it comes out, it pops up, hey, there's a new episode, and you go watch it, or maybe you see in a stream that your friends are watching a new episode of such and such, and you just go watch it. I mean, it is nice to have something scheduled. Sports probably would be a good thing to stay scheduled, but I think, the fact that it comes out when it comes out, I think is fine. And I know with my media, I don't, my shows, the last show I did was, I think, about 40 minutes long because I had a lot of interviews and stuff from a conference. And then the one before that, I was at Mini Maker Faire, East Bay Mini Maker Faire, and it was like 15 minutes long. And I don't at all tie myself to any of those conventions, and I don't have advertising, so that helps. I don't have to worry about that part of it either. So.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's both radio and TV are in these restrictions right now, and I would like to see a change there, but you can't underestimate the impact of TiVo and then subsequent DVR systems. That kind of changed the way we saw this, because it used to be if you had to see your show at 8, you had to be there at 8. Now, sometimes we still want that. Like, Tom, I know you were dead set on being there for the premiere of Doctor Who this season, and you wouldn't have waited. That's not something you go, oh, I'll TiVo it and see it tomorrow. That was an event thing in your, in your world, and you had to see it. I think that's always still sort of going to be with us, but it would be nice that on the tail end of it, they don't have to kind of wrap things up. And I think if you give them more freedom, someone gets an extra 15 minutes to tell their story, then we'll get a truer sense of the vision of the person who wrote it, rather than the vision of the person who wrote it, and then crunched and edited out a few scenes to make sure we fit it in an hour.
Although you don't have that natural limit on you, right? I mean, Twitter is kind of cool because it limits you to 140 characters, and you have to fit within that parameter. And there's something to be said to say, okay, you've only got 30 minutes to tell the story, or you've only got 60 minutes. Whereas if you've got the freedom to tell the story in whatever length you want, you also have the freedom to go on as long as you want.
But you don't, because you have budgets.
So, so there are other constraints besides time. That's
right.
true.
And in the movie world, and in the movie world too. I mean, there are some movies that we all know were just too long, right? I mean, the Lord of the Rings, the last one. I mean, they really needed to cut that down. I'm sorry, it's my favorite book ever, but I still think they needed to cut that last one down. So
I like the extended version, but
I like it for the content, you know. And as a geek, I like it. But I'm like, you know what? I can see that 3 people over there are falling asleep. You know, I mean, it's just like, you know, something you're still gonna have to edit for time, and because you're just going on and on and on and on.
Oh my gosh! In King Kong, I had to pee so bad it was almost a medical emergency, and I didn't want to leave. I wanted to stay and watch the thing, but yeah, 3.5 hours is too much. So yeah, there's this natural thing where we got to figure out: do we go back to intermissions, like, you know, in the 20s and stuff? That'd be cool. Yeah, I'm all for that.
Yeah, you know, there's one more thing. I was thinking about this the other day too, because I was watching The Twilight Zone, which just came out on Netflix. You can stream Twilight Zone now on Netflix, and those shows were 25 minutes long, not 20 minutes. It was a half-hour show, but they were 25 minutes long. And I'm like, I think this is why I like the old version, the original series, better than the reinvented one that came out in the 80s. Because they had that 5 extra minutes, and they were able to wrap the story up a little bit. They made
good use of it. Yeah,
exactly.
And instead, you see shows like Lost or Stargate Universe going to a title card instead of a title sequence to steal back a few more minutes. Yep. If you look at any HBO show, they always have these amazing title sequences because they can.
They have the time.
They don't have any ads.
Survivor's like that too. Survivor has a real quick title sequence now.
Now, Mary, what do you think about? And this is particular to Twit's live stream. If you want to have sort of a live stream where people know when to expect stuff. For instance, we run into this here. Part of me wants to start Tech News Today at 2:30, and it doesn't always because Leo's running long on the show previously. Part of me thinks, like, we really need to button down and we need to get better at this, and Leo agrees. But then part of it, I know Leo thinks the other way as well, and I do too, which is, you know, if his show is good, it should be able to run long, and I'll just start a little later. But then that inconveniences my audience and my guests. And do you think we'll end up with a hybrid where, you know, live things still have to fit to a schedule, or will audiences come to know, like, you know what, if it doesn't start on time, that's fine?
Yeah, I think that live things probably will still have some sort of schedule. I mean, sports and podcasts like these, but you know, something like the Doctor Who premiere or Game of Thrones, I think what they'll probably do is just make it available on demand at that time that we're used to, like, say, prime time on a Sunday night. They'll just make it available then. It'll still be on demand, though. It won't just show. But yeah, I do think that live things like this will still sort of have some kind of format. But I mean, this show isn't always the same amount of time, right? Sometimes it's like an hour, sometimes maybe 45 minutes. I'm not sure.
Yeah, no, you're right. It definitely varies. And we try to schedule our shows so they have enough buffer zone around them that, you know, for instance, Tech News Today starts at 2:30. It ends at 3:30, or, you know, roughly it has that slot. And then we don't start FourCast until 4, so that there is a little, you know, if Tech News Today runs long, FourCast can still start on time. And likewise, FourCast is only supposed to be 30 to 45 minutes, actually more like 45 minutes. But if it goes to an hour because we're having a good time, having a good conversation, that's great. You know, it's not an issue. We build in a little buffer. So I think this is a great prediction. I really like this one, and I totally agree. I think the formats are going to loosen up. I read an article about multi-platform production as a big buzzword in Hollywood now, where they're coming up with different storylines for products based on the platform they're going to produce it for, and they're all complementary to each other. So I think we're seeing it already. Let's move over to you, Aaron. Short-term prediction, things you think will happen sooner than later. What do you got? Right.
So this one's a softball. It probably has been brought up on this show before, but I'm going to throw it out anyway, which is Android tablets will take over the Apple market share by the end of the year. So
by the end of the
short-term.
year.
By the end of the year,
Ah.
there will be more Android tablets sold than there will be Apple iPads.
What
Wow.
tablet is going to power that?
So it's a combination, right? So it's a combination of all of them.
Okay.
We're going to be seeing these high-end ones like the Zoom, right? That's already out. Maybe not doing as well as they hoped, but I think that's partly the price point. So what's going to happen is the price point of the tablets, the Android tablets, will start coming down. And it's up to Apple whether or not they shift the price point of their tablets. But the price point of the tablets in general are going to come down. And I think that you're also going to be, the market's going to be flooded, especially around Christmas time. Probably start seeing this in October, November with really cheap tablets. So really, really cheap tablets that people are going to want to buy for their kids for Christmas or whatever. The market's going to be flooded with those, and they're all going to be running Android because they can. And so I think by the end of the year, the price will come down. People are going to start buying them. People that have either been holding off or maybe they've got a first-generation iPad and there's something new out that they want to get their hands on, but they don't necessarily want to go to iPad 2. And so they're going to start eating these things up. And I think by the end of the year, it's going to happen.
So this is interesting because I would have agreed with you probably right around end of year last year when we started hearing about all the new Android tablets that would be coming, and it goes to say, I suppose, in logic that perhaps it would follow the same pattern that they did with the phones, and the Android phones, you know, on the whole have done that thing you're talking about in the phone market and the handheld market. But I don't know anymore about the tablets at this stage. They keep coming out, and they're high profile, and they're ones people are excited about, and then they kind of just sort of peter out. And I'm not anti-Android. I'm not pro-Apple. I have an iPad too, and I love it. But I don't. I really did think this would be an uphill battle for Apple this year. I don't know anymore. They're selling these things hand over fist like crazy, and the other stuff's starting to look kind of, I don't know, average and not great. And if they don't, I'm not saying in the long run they couldn't do this, but by the end of the year, that seems really hard to me.
Yeah, well, I would have agreed with you on that. I was expecting a lot more out of the Apple iPad 2 than it was. I was expecting some new revolutionary thing, and it wasn't. It was just a generation type, incremental type improvement over the first one.
But it's a lot thinner.
It is thinner. That's right.
And it has
yes.
cameras.
Yes, percentage-wise, it's dramatically thinner.
Yeah.
But you know, but the thing is that you know. If there was some sort of technology gap introduced by Apple with the iPad 2 where all the other vendors still had to catch up again, right? Because they're in catch-up mode right now anyway. And if they had to catch up again and scrap the plans that they already had for all their tablets, I would agree with you. But I think all the plans that they have for the tablets that are going to be coming out are all still valid. They're all still going to be wanted. They're all still going to be on an equal footing pretty much with the Apple iPad 2. So I think they have a really good chance of taking off. And just the fact that there's going to be so many more vendors and not just Apple putting them out, I think we're going to see exactly the same thing we saw with the phone market. You know, when I had a G1, and I'll tell you, when the G1 first came out, I got it right away, and as a technology enthusiast, I was really excited about it. But I was like, it's definitely not an iPhone, you know. And then all of a sudden, we saw all these cool Android devices, cell phone devices come out, and it just took off. It just exploded. So I think we're going to see the same thing in the tablet market.
Mary, I saw you kind of nodding your head when Scott was talking about the iPad. Do you think do you think Aaron's right on this one, or do you think it's going to take a little longer?
I think it'll take longer than a year maybe, but I have an iPad and I love it. I didn't pay for it though. I won it, which was awesome. I think it all depends on the price of the Android tablets. I think the iPad is still really expensive. I mean, maybe it's not for what it is, but I think for the average consumer, I just think it's so expensive. And I think if the Android tablets can beat it out in price consistently, then I think that they may eventually overtake the iPad sooner rather than later, but I don't know about the end of the year.
It feels like 2012. It feels like 2012 is the year of competing tablets, but that's also the year that maybe whatever Apple's been holding back on, I don't know, Retina displays or whatever the crap they're holding on to, because they always do, that may be the year they pull that out. Because I feel like they're confident that this is the year where they don't get overtaken, and it's 2012 where the blood gets spilled. And I could see Android making huge inroads by then. And certainly that involves a lot of latter half of 2011, you know, with a lot of buildup and a lot of success during the holiday season for Android. So I kind of have no doubt that by 2012, It'll be an Android market. It'll be like it is with the phones. The iPhone will continue to sell gangbusters, but there'll be tons of other alternatives out there. And I see this as nothing but good for the industry as a whole. It's just a matter of timing, how quickly they can do it.
2008, I predicted that Android would outsell iOS, our iPhones, by the end of 2009. That was like 2 years too early. So I know that logic where it's like, no, there's a lot of good product coming out. There's a lot of SKUs. Yep. The prices are better. People are going to see the options. So you may be more accurate than me, and I think even if you're not right this year, you're definitely going to be right by the end of next year, just because of the numbers. But Barnes & Noble Nook Color, do you count that as an Android tablet? That's only $249. It's now got Froyo. Right. It's not the Android marketplace on it. It's a limited app store, but you could see more variations like that, and that could tip it over the top.
I think that's going to be the tipping point, like I said, is the cheap ones that come out in October, November timeframe. And so we won't really know until this time next year whether I was right or not. Because it'll take a long time to count all those sales around Christmas time, I think. But I do think that those cheap tablets that come around around Christmas time are going to tip it towards.
It's going to be a lot of number spinning too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right.
If Amazon pushed out an Android version of the
it may happen
Kindle,
too.
Yep. That'll be it. If we're counting those, that'll do it.
The Amazon apocalypse of 2012. All right, let's move on to our long-term prediction. These are more of the in 100 years sort of predictions. What do you got for us, Aaron?
Well, here's where I've got I did two after we started talking so much about media, because my prediction that I was going to use was that media distribution, as we know it, will cease to exist. So it's a little bit broader than what Mary was talking about before. So we can talk about that one, or I can go back to an Apple prediction. But it's up to you guys.
Wait, what's your Apple prediction?
So the Apple prediction is
then we can decide.
Yeah. So here's the thing with Apple, right? I think Apple is going to need to reinvent themselves after Steve Jobs, because the ideas are going to start to run out at some point. There's a lot of ideas I think that they have that are in the works that are Steve approved. Mm-hmm. That so we'll, after whatever happens with Steve, we won't get into that, but let's just say whatever happens with Steve, he's not on the scene for whatever reason, and I think that the ideas that are there today will run out. Apple will try to reinvent themselves, and they will be unsuccessful.
Mary, I as our guest, would you care to choose? Would you care to react to one or the other of these predictions? We'll give you guest first right of first refusal.
You want to talk about media some more, or do you want to talk about Apple?
I can't imagine Apple without Steve Jobs, so I would maybe tend to agree with this one, with the Apple one.
That's the weird thing, right? Like Steve Jobs, people always say, apologists for Apple anyway, say, well, it isn't all just Steve Jobs. He's the spearhead. Yes, he's the great leader and all that. But in the end, it's now a bunch of people that he trusts and has around him, and they all know stuff too now. And so they're going to carry on the great legacy of Apple. But sadly, or certainly it's a good thing for them in the short term, but a bad thing in the long term. He is Apple in a very real way to a lot of people. Whether they intended that to be the case or not, that's what's happened. His personality was too strong to keep it contained. We don't ever think of Microsoft and go, oh, without Bill Gates, what are they going to do? Actually, that kind of did happen. But anyway, but you know what I mean? You don't look at him as the icon that tugs this boat. But you do that with Steve Jobs. And so when this kind of conversation comes up, as much as I hate to admit it, I think they will struggle for that identity, not because they can't do it, but maybe because we won't let them do it easily. I think it'll be hard for us to let go of the Steve Jobs mythos and move on to whatever the next phase is and be super stoked about that. Instead, we'll all be naysayers and be concerned about their future and pretty much think they're not going to be able to pull it off. And they'll have to struggle to figure out how to do that. They've had plenty of times in their history where they've had to pull it off despite people's, people thinking they couldn't, and they've done that successfully. But again, it's because it's Steve Jobs doing it, and now we have that associated with him. So, yeah, without him, I tend to agree with Mary and with Aaron that that is not going to be a happy day for anybody, stocks included.
Apple has an all-star team, and when you look at it, Jonathan Ives is why the things look pretty, and Tim Cook is why they've got all that cash sitting around for them to lock up their supply lines. So there's a lot of good things to be said that team can continue to churn out really good ideas. But Steve is the editor. Mm-hmm. Steve Jobs is the one that comes in and is arrogant enough and confident enough to say, no, we're not going to do that. No, this phone's going to be on edge when it comes out, and that's going to be good enough. We're not going to have an app store right away. These are the limits we're going to have. And I don't know that those were his decisions, but I do know that he is the one who sets the lines in which the others work and do their brilliance. And so somebody has to take over that role, and I think that's the key thing that is questionable, whether they will be able to resist feature creep and putting too many things and not being as simple. Maybe they will, but Aaron, I think that's what you're hitting on is without Steve Jobs there, it's not a guarantee that you've got this vision that sets the boundary lines about what's going to be the priority and the focus, and that's what he has proven to be brilliant at.
Right, and I think that every successful corporation has one of those visionaries that does exactly what you just said. They set the boundary points. They said, this is what we're going to focus on, and this is what we're not going to focus on. And people underestimate the value of that. I've learned to appreciate it over my years in enterprise IT. You've got to have someone like that. If everyone's just running around, you end up with things, and I think this is part of, as much as I love Google, I think this is part of their problems lately with some of the things that they've tried to release, i.e. Buzz, i.e. Wave, is that there's a lot of little people running around and there's no one there to say, you know what, guys, it's great that you're running around doing things, but here's the limit. Here's where we draw the line. Here's what we will go forward with, and here's what we will not go forward with. You got to have somebody like that, and I think that's been part of Google's problems too. But when I was arguing this point with myself, when I was thinking about these things, I always kind of argue back and forth in my head. One of the things that I came up with was, just look at the stock. Every time something happens to Steve, God bless him, the stock just dumps. And I can't imagine. I think that beyond the technological point that we've been discussing, I think it's going to be pretty hard for shareholders to get confidence back after Steve Jobs' reign is over.
And I should thank Web499 in the chat room for pointing out that I confused Jonathan Ive with St. Ives when I called him Jonathan Ives. He has no S in his last name.
Are you sure he doesn't paint pretty pictures? Wasn't there Currier and Ives, right? Wasn't it?
Curry. Yeah, well, there is some crossover there. He is a design genius.
Right. Maybe his great-great-great-grandfather or something.
All right, let's move over to you, Mary. Sort of the flying cars will come in the far, far future sort of prediction, your long-term prediction. What do you got?
Yeah, so I think in 100 years, most of the American workforce will be working at home, telecommuting, and I think that's because, there's so many desk jobs already, but I think desk jobs are going to increase as manufacturing continues to shift away from the economy. But I think that it's also going to be economic benefits. We all know the benefits of telecommuting and working at home. I think those are going to be so great. They're going to shift into universities and high schools. I don't know about elementary school. I think we're still going to want to get the young kids out of the house and into school. But I think we're going to have this culture of working at home and isolation a little bit. And I think that we're going to have a mental health crisis with young adults. And much of the way now we're having anti-obesity initiatives and just kind of awareness of that. I think that's going to be the big issue then. I think it's going to be a real problem for people, younger adults who don't have kids yet, don't have families, who are working in isolation. And so we're going to have to figure out how to, encourage them to socialize and improve their mental health.
It's interesting because, there's a lot of resistance to this idea. We talked about this last week, in fact, about, generally there's resistance toward too much telecommuting. Like, there are companies who just still aren't comfortable with the idea. If they aren't constantly overseeing what you're doing, they don't feel like you're getting, they're getting the value for what they're paying you, that sort of thing. So if that does shift and companies start to do this more and allow it more, then we'll have this other problem, right? Then comes the new side effect, which is the only connection people have to the outside world is this desk job at home. I tend to think that probably won't be as bad as people think. I mean, I can speak from my own experience. When I quit full time and started Frog Pants full time, I basically shifted from an office environment with other people to an office environment of me. And occasionally I'm on camera like this, or I'm talking to other people over Skype, or there's a lot of that going on, a lot of phone calls and stuff. But the work that's getting done, I'm doing in pretty strict isolation. And I feel driven to, when I've had a long day of that, get the crap out of here and do something social. So I think there's a basic human need that all of this technology will never quite fill. Even if I had cameras on me all day and I'm constantly having conversations with people via screens, until they can be projected into this chair next to me and we can have that human one-on-one, face-to-face kind of interaction, I feel like that stuff will take care of itself, because people just don't want to get trapped in that. I know people, we like to make fun of people who are trapped in their basements and don't get enough sun, but I think most of the time people go and get their own sun.
Disclaimer, Scott is broadcasting from his basement.
I totally am. I totally am. But I can't, like after this, I'm going to a meeting, I'm going to a restaurant. I can't wait. It's going to be great to get out. The sun's finally coming out this afternoon. It's been raining all day. So I'm really looking forward to that. And I feel like most people will respond that way. There'll always be a few, but they're already doing that, I figure.
Yeah, I've got to agree with Mary on this one, although I would probably put it in the midterm category as opposed to the long term. I think it's going to happen quickly.
We got rid of that category, so she had to put it somewhere.
Yeah. But only because, I mean, I do this now. I've been doing it since 10 years, almost 10 years. I've been working from home. And I've worked for a lot of corporations. And so I think that the reason I think it's going to happen sooner from a corporate standpoint is purely monetary reasons. Both every time I've been through this where people start letting people work from home and they start selling off a few of their buildings that they don't have to power and that they don't have to cool, and all of a sudden it becomes, wow, let's get more people in this program right away, because it's an automatic hit on the bottom line. It gives a little bit more cash on the bottom line, a little bit less that they have to pay out every month. I thought that Mary had a really interesting idea, though, when it comes to education, which is a little bit different than it usually gets talked about. And I'm kind of wondering, I mean, I know a lot of my friends or friends of mine that do homeschool now, and they have had, or I have seen at least, some kids that do have a little bit of social preclusions. I don't want to make it sound bad, but, they're just a little bit awkward sometimes.
Well, you don't have the natural ability to interact with other folks if you homeschool, which is why a lot of homeschoolers that I've talked to have groups, so that the kids are actually getting all of that interaction and that socialization.
Right. That's what I was just going to say, is that a lot of the groups that I know, the people that homeschool, have actually gone to, they homeschool 3, maybe 4 days out of the week, and then 1 day a week they actually come in and get some of the more advanced, like maybe the sciences or what have you, where they actually sit in a classroom experience. They actually have a recess if they're of the right age, and they actually get the social interaction as well.
And I can see this becoming a sort of a mashup situation where you do a little bit of homeschooling and you do a little bit of what Mary's talking about with distance learning. You kind of choose the best of both worlds, get the best classes, best professors. You don't end up sending your kid to some awful school because you happen to live in the wrong side of town, and that could be really beneficial. And if more people are telecommuting, then you don't have as much of a problem with the kids needing to use school as a babysitter, right? Because one or more of the parents may be home anyway. Although it's a lot easier to do your job if you're not also watching a child too. So I think that's going to have to be worked out as well. But I think it is an intriguing idea. We've heard people talking about telecommuting rising before, Mary, but this is the first time I think anybody's really said it's going to push into educational system, and I think that has a lot of intriguing possibilities.
Yeah, it just seems like education too is so expensive now. I don't know if it'll make it much cheaper, but it's at least with the universities. But just thinking back to when I was in college, I went to University of Texas, and
Newcomb Horns.
Yeah, that's right. And I loved it, and I wouldn't change it for the world. But it would have been possible for a lot of that. I guess not no, I could do the art classes. I could do the art at home. it would be possible for a lot of that to be through video lectures and things like that. I wouldn't have had as much fun. I wouldn't have met as many people, though, and that's the problem. And that's why I think that we might have more mental health issues with it.
Yeah, you can't go to the Texas Showdown if you're doing distance learning at the University of Texas.
No,
yeah,
you
that's
can't.
right.
No, but the idea that more people could get education is great, and if it's simpler and cheaper to get, I'm all for that, because I'm of the opinion that we're raising a bunch of dummies right now, so anything we can do...
I'm sure your kids appreciate that.
Well, and that's the thing. We push them pretty hard, and they're all getting really good grades. I'm really proud of my oldest daughter. She's pulling a 4.0 and doing great and has scholarships lined up and all this kind of cool stuff. I'm totally stoked about all that, but I just feel generationally speaking, she has some friends that walk in here, and they're like stones. They just aren't, nothing's sinking in. They got no plan. And I realize I'm starting to sound like old man Johnson.
What's wrong with this younger generation?
But it does feel different. It feels like they're all so Facebooked out, and they're just not paying attention to anything, and they just think the whole world is different. I do sound like that guy. I realize
totally
that. I do.
But I know what you're saying. All right, we got crazy-ass predictions coming up. We want to take a break and thank our sponsor, Netflix, delivering movies directly to your home, either by DVD or streaming. If you want to stream them to your PC or Mac, you can do that with a Netflix account. Or if you have an Xbox 360, PS3, or Nintendo Wii, you've got the ability to watch them on your television right now. They also work with Roku, with Google TV, with a whole different bunch of ways to put it on your television. You can watch TV shows and movies. Jammer B apparently watched this as well over the weekend, Salt, with Angelina Jolie.
Was that good?
Yeah, it was better than I expected. And I'd heard some pretty good reviews about it. The trailer looked intriguing, but I'm like, action movie. It's probably action movie. But they had some twists and turns in there that I didn't see coming, and they kept me guessing. So I really enjoyed that. It was my wife's idea. She wanted to watch it, and I kind of got dragged into it half willingly and was glad I did. But that's kind of the thing, right, Scott, is you watch a Netflix movie, you can just take a chance on something because you got unlimited viewing.
No, yeah, that's the beauty of it. In fact, we do that with FilmSack all the time, this podcast we do on the Frog Pants Network, and it's a chance for us to say, we've never seen something like Freaked, this movie we just saw, which wasn't very good. I don't recommend it. But it was awesome to be able to kind of Russian roulette that a little bit, see what we think, talk about it. I cannot think of a time where we would have been able to do that more easy than we can today. I love Netflix for that.
Anyway, if you're not already a Netflix subscriber, go try it out. You got a free trial membership coming your way thanks to Twit. Go to netflix.com/twit and get a look at what's going on there. I think you might like it. We thank Netflix for their support of Twit.
One word, MacGyver.
Yeah, because they've added the CBS shows now.
Exactly.
Star Trek's coming, too. I don't know if it's up yet.
The original Mission Impossible. I already mentioned the original Twilight Zone.
Yeah.
Man, there's a lot of stuff.
Yeah, that's true.
And by the way, RoboCop totally holds up. Just throwing it out there. Check it out. RoboCop.
Serve the public good. You must watch
Terminator.
That's right.
Terminator's now on Instant right now.
You have 15 seconds to comply, Tom.
All right. Let's hurry up then and move to the crazy-ass predictions. Mary! One really far out there forecast. Time frame doesn't even matter. What do you got for us?
So I think we're going to figure out immortality. I think it's going to involve somehow digitizing our brain and implanting it into new clones of our bodies. But the catch is, I think it's going to lead to insane overpopulation. And this is really bleak. I think that we won't have the resources to send colonies to space because we're going to have so many people. It's going to happen very fast. So our resources are going to be really taxed with feeding all these people and just the whole overall population. So we're going to institute some kind of IQ exam because we're going to really value people who can contribute to society and figure out these problems. And we're going to execute the people who don't pass the exam.
Wow. It's the Logan's Run sequel.
Yes.
All right, you can live past 30, but you have to be smart.
Soylent Green is people.
Soylent Green is stupid
That's awesome.
people, apparently.
So what you mean? Aside, let's forget about the execution stuff for a minute, which I'd love. I love that part of this. For us to deal with the social implications of everybody living forever or living really long lives, because there are lots of those implications. We'd have to probably limit childbirth in some way. We'd have to move to the moon, more than likely, or something. Something would have to happen for us to be able to handle that sort of thing. You think that only the smartest among us could handle those problems?
Well, I don't know. I'm not saying that's what we should do, but I feel like if we're in that society, that we're going to have to figure out what people we value, and I think that a society like that with so many problems, I think they're going to need the really smart people.
I think I can save a lot of lives here. Cory Doctorow has a book. What's the Disney, the book that
Down and Out in the
Magic Kingdom. And you know how people can just kind of store themselves and go offline? So I think instead of executing, it's just mandatory storage. And, you get let out every 100 years or so. See if you've learned anything while you've been in virtual reality. And you still have this productivity test that's like, if you can contribute, then we'll let you be out for longer. How's that?
That makes sense. So then when we figure out how to colonize Mars and space stations and everything, then we can let them out. Right.
Now, we may have a problem if we store everybody on EC2 in the Virginia data centers. So we're going to have good backups, data centers with redundancy, all of that.
Well, there was this idea in the whole, I don't know if you've read the Pandora's Star trilogy or whatever it was. I don't forget how many books it was. But there was this whole idea in that series about people going, non-physical. So physicality doesn't matter anymore because you live in the ether or whatever. I don't know. But it was an interesting idea that you could actually, kind of what you were saying, but you still physically exist and you're still sentient, but you are not necessarily attached to a body.
You're in PlayStation Home,
exactly.
Which also goes down.
Exactly.
You know what? That's interesting because then the smart people actually get dragged into bodies because we need them while everybody else gets to float around in the AI dreamland.
Right. The smart people and the strong people.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Wow.
The strong people, too.
We
have a lot of robots.
That's true. The robots can do the heavy lifting.
That's true. All right. Great prediction, Mary. Aaron, over to you for the crazy-ass prediction. In 2,000 years, we'll all be made of cheese or something like that. What's your prediction?
So it actually is flying cars. And here's the deal. It's not really flying cars. It's a variation of that, right? So, so gravity, right? So gravity will actually, we will overcome gravity. And it will be obviously the biggest revolution out of all the revolutions that we've had. We'll actually, not just flying, but we'll actually, the moment that scientists figure out, and maybe it's these quarks that are spinning around the Hadron Collider, but somebody will eventually find a way to defeat gravity. And when they do, all hell breaks loose, right? I mean, all bets are off at that point. So I think in terms of, what I think of is actually the really biggest one. I know everyone always comes up with this one, but I do actually think of this a lot. What's the biggest thing that could happen that would change society forever, would be completely wild, wacky, the biggest thing ever to hit. I mean, it would actually, I think it would have to be, gravity. We find out how to overcome gravity. I mean, think about it. It could be that that's what those black holes are out there. Are people's failed attempt to overcome gravity.
Oops.
Oops. I can't stop
Singularity was near. A little too near.
I can't stop the reaction. And all of a sudden you end up with this, uncontrollable. Wouldn't that be a great movie, like, one of these doomsday movies?
Yeah.
I finally figured out how to overcome gravity, and then it just starts growing and growing. And
a tragic comedy.
Yeah.
That movie would end in 5 minutes is the sad part, but I like this. I wonder if we could just make the technology into our shoes or something. Because the benefits of no gravity would be kind of epic. Like there is a lot of space above our heads, and before the atmosphere becomes too oxygen-less, that we could build a lot of cool stuff. And if all it took was, I don't know, tubes that I could step into and float, in a straight line up to the next city, that's a place I could totally get into. I could totally live in that place. So it'd be nice if it wasn't just a black hole that would destroy everything. If we could somehow talk to Adidas or Nike and work that out, that'd be great.
Well, not only that, but I mean, there's a lot of, even if it's on a small scale, which I think is probably where it will start. I have no idea what I'm talking about here. But I've got to imagine with something like this that it's got to start on a very small scale, right? So it starts with these very, very small particles. But then think of like, it's going to be very expensive, obviously, too, right? No matter what it is. But think of the medical possibilities, the ability for certain operations to take place that can't happen right now because just because of the physics of the thing. If you could actually free up the gravity and manipulate things in such a way where you don't have to worry about that with much more precision, I've got to imagine that things like the medical community would be able to benefit from those very early when this gravity defeating technology is first invented, they'll be one of the first segments to be able to take advantage of it, I would think.
We've got venture capitalists in the audience ready to give you seed funding now.
Right. I'm going to go out and find those quarks. They're out there.
Barry, would you want to live in a world without gravity?
No, that sounds scary, but it could, like Scott said, I think if it could be harnessed, some kind of transportation system, that would be very useful, for sure. I mean, it wouldn't, it would be much easier to move things around, right? Am I wrong in that? I mean, you still have to pull it somehow, but
you could change the weight. That makes sense.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, they'd really need to warn us, right? Like they'd have to give us some kind of, hold onto your furniture. Gravity stops tonight at 7 p.m. and then
do not remove the tag from this mattress, or it will float away.
So there would be a lot of. I mean, this would be, Aaron, the paradigm shift you're looking for. Honestly,
Exactly.
This would change everything about everything. Like everything we do in this life. I'm trying to think of something I don't do that doesn't depend on gravity, and I can't. It all needs gravity. So yeah, it changes everything. It changes how we exercise. We'll all get super fat and soft. It's going to be bad.
But it doesn't matter. We'll be weightless. We could change our weight. We could dial our weight.
Right.
Get too fat, dial your weight up.
Well, and imagine the industry that would be created. I mean, that's what always gets me thinking: is what if gravity wasn't an issue? What could I build? What could I do? What could I accomplish? How would things change? It's something that I do think about when I'm otherwise unoccupied.
And localized gravity could be useful.
Exactly.
If you want to keep something in place,
right?
And even more stable.
Right.
All right. I believe that leads us to 4 questions, Scott.
Yeah, 4 questions. It's our chance to ask you guys rapid fire style 4 questions. You are not allowed to think too hard about your answers. You must answer from the gut. And I'm going to start with you, Mary. Are you ready for your 4 questions?
Sure.
All right. You look comfortable, so here we go. When girls take over the webcomics for good, who will carry on the grand tradition of infantile misogyny that is so prevalent in comics today?
Cats.
Oh, good.
Of course.
They're going to do
obvious
all the
answer,
terrible
Scott.
things.
I don't even know why you asked.
I know. I may as well just said it. Which will you prefer in the future? A constant IV drip for our nutritional needs, or a bowl of genetically honed goo 3 times a day?
Do I have to eat the goo?
Yes, you must eat it with your mouth.
The IV drip.
All right, me too. It would be nice and concealed too. Be like strapped to our back and just kind of run up on our arm and stuff. It'd be great.
I like pudding.
Just don't punch anybody in it. Be bad. We all know we will have a robot president one day, but what do you predict its name will be? It may be a he or a she, I suppose. We could just assign it gender, but let's assume it's an it. What name would you give our robot president?
Cyberbomber?
Love it. Love it, love it. All right.
Where was this robot built? I want to see its manufacturing papers.
That's right. Can I get the serial number?
Can I get the inspector tag? And then finally, if like Tom suggests every week, we will all be made of cheese one day, what type of cheese would you like to be?
Goat cheese.
And why? Why do you like goat cheese?
It's weird and different and unique.
And it comes
And
from a
funky.
goat.
And tasty.
Yes, comes from a goat.
Nice job. You have successfully answered 4 questions. You will not be ejected from the call. Congratulations.
Yay!
All right, Aaron, are you sitting comfortably?
I am.
Good.
Yes,
then we will begin. Question number 1. Once the Singularity has produced an immortal Larry Ellison and Google and Microsoft are safely his, what form will our happiness take?
I don't know, but we'll all be red at that point. Red is the color of Oracle, so...
You've experienced this recently?
I have, yes.
Question number 2. Linux on the desktop as a dominant choice. When?
Today.
But no, when do the most desktops have it?
So I think...
Because I don't think that is true today.
Right. Well, actually, I mean, if you think about Android, right? Android is based on Linux, so I mean, I think we're already there. I think that most people prefer their phones. Well, maybe not yet, actually. I'm basing this off my experience. I would rather check my email on my phone any day than actually go to a keyboard, a desktop, or a laptop.
So do we never get Linux dominant on a laptop or PC?
No.
Is it just go because we don't care about?
We don't care anymore.
All right. Question number 3: if we make first contact, should we share our source code with aliens?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Otherwise,
principles still apply.
The principle still applies, and Richard Stallman will kill us all if we do not.
He will be there for first contact.
We have to.
Exactly.
No question.
He may be. I don't know. When our cryogenically preserved head is awakened in the year 4532 and reattached to a sporting new late model German engineered human body, what will be the first thing you ask for?
Sex.
Good.
You said the first thing that came into my mind.
You've
right?
got a German engineered human body.
I mean, come on.
Why waste it?
Right.
Thank you very much. That is your 4 questions. Thank you, and thank you both. That's the end of our show.
Yeah.
And a high point to end it on. No, we really. This was really fun. This was really good. I really appreciate you both hanging out with us. Aaron, let folks know a little bit more about what you do and where they can find you online.
Right. So you can always find me at thesourceshow.org, which is where I host my video podcast about open source and making things and hacking things. It's a great place to find me. You can find me on Twitter at /Aaron Newcomb. You can find me on Facebook at /Aaron Newcomb, or you can just go to aaronnewcomb.com. You'll find everything there.
Excellent. Yep. I highly recommend it. Floss is a great show. And
Mary, you can find me on Floss as well. Floss Weekly. I didn't mention that.
Oh, you didn't mention that?
I'm on Twit, and I failed to mention the Twit part of
That's all right. I also want to thank you, Mary, for being on the show. Really appreciate meeting you and get to talk to you. It's been fun.
Thank you. It was great to be here.
Let folks know where they can find your comics and anything else you do online.
Yeah, well, my comic is non-player character. I just abbreviate it to NPC, so it's npccomic.com, and it's about a girl and her cats, and they play World of Warcraft. And that's where I live. So my Twitter is Twitter/Mary Varn, but everything's over at NPC. And
the cats have a van recently, I've noticed, and a hoodie.
Yes, they've been hacking. They're trying to take down lolcat sites because they feel that they humiliate cats, and they don't like that. They feel that their noble species is being humiliated. So
I am behind their fight. I hope they remain. I hope they. In fact, I almost wish we had Ben Ha on the show as well to face the questions about what he has done to the image of cats.
These things are. I got to say, this is hilarious. If you haven't checked this out, you got to check it. I've been reading it as we've been doing the show here, and this is really funny. So I hope everybody checks it out.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, great stuff, Mary. Thanks again. Scott Johnson, anything we need to take care of before we leave?
Well, people should make sure to check out the morning stream on Wednesday mornings. Tom coming on again for another Current Geek segment. I'm totally looking forward to that. Other than that, you can follow me at Extra Life. You know, it's like when Mario finds a mushroom and he gets an extra dude. It's like that, Extra Life. Twitter.com/Extra Life. And they can learn all about everything else I have going on at frogpants.com. Thank you, Tom. Tonight has been a pleasure for me.
Absolutely. For me as well. Don't forget to leave comments on our website, fourcastpodcast.com, or send us an email to fourcastpodcast@gmail.com. See you next time.
But it's only 32 years away.
Wait.